Hey everybody, Tim Lewis with TimLewisSports.com here. We're talking fantasy football week 12. It's the special Thanksgiving edition of the video blog. Nothing really special about it except for the fact that Thanksgiving is coming up on Thursday, and that means we have 3 games. Not just one game, 3 games this Thursday. The games are New England against Detroit, New Orleans faces off against Dallas, and Cincinnati plays the New York Jets. So keep that in mind as you're setting your starting lineups. Now, I usually fall in love with the quarterback who starts against the Houston pass defense, and for good reason. The Texans have the worst pass defense in the NFL, but I'm changing my tune this week. That's because Rusty Smith is starting at quarterback in Tennessee. Vince Young is now on the IR. Kerry Collins is also out, so the rookie is starting against Houston. I say stay away from Rusty Smith, even though he has a favorable matchup. I don't think the kid has it in him to do any kind of damage. Now, you have to question if Minnesota will have a revival with Brad Childress out, much like the Dallas Cowboys did when Jason Garrett took over in Dallas. Brett Favre does have a solid matchup against Washington, so that should help the cause for a little bit of a revival for the Vikings. Now, Eli Manning did a great job of reeling people in for a few weeks, throwing a lot of touchdown passes, not throwing many interceptions, but then he returned to his old ways. He does have a good chance to bounce back this week against Jacksonville, but keep in mind he's losing wide receivers like crazy. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up in a couple seconds. Now, Peyton Manning hasn't had the best fantasy football weeks lately, and he has another tough matchup coming up this week against San Diego. Believe it or not, the Chargers have the toughest pass defense in the NFL right now. John Kitna lit up Detroit last week. Tame your expectations for him this week as he takes on New Orleans. I really like Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Schaub this week. I also give the nod to Matt Castle against Seattle. On the flip side of that game, Matt Hasselbeck should also be able to put up some decent points against the Kansas City defense. The sleeper pick this week is Detroit's Shaun Hill. New England's pass defense isn't that solid, so Hill should be able to put up some big points this week on Thanksgiving Day. There are some injuries to talk about at running back, a lot of the same injuries to talk about. Jonathan Stewart in Carolina, Joseph Adai, Reggie Bush, and Pierre Thomas all listed as questionable, so keep an eye on their status as the week goes on. Mike Goodson is a solid play at running back, at least he has been the past couple of weeks for the Panthers. Could be again this week if Jonathan Stewart is out. Carolina plays against Cleveland. Even if Joseph Adai comes back for the Colts, they have a tough matchup this week on the ground against San Diego. I'm not trying to say that the Chargers defense is the best in the NFL, but they've done a pretty darn good job, especially on paper when you look at the statistics. Donald Brown isn't worth a start if Adai and Mike Hart are out. Donald Brown hasn't shown me anything at all this year. Chris Ivory listed as questionable. Bush and Thomas both practiced on Monday. I don't know if that means they're going to play or not. Keep an eye on their status. If they are out, Chris Ivory, who was a little bit banged up after a tough game against Seattle, should be able to put up some good numbers against Dallas if those other guys are out. I like Rashard Mendenhall, Steven Jackson, Peyton Hillis, Ray Rice, Frank Gore, Adrian Peterson this week. All of them should be must starts anyway, so I'm not telling you anything too wild and crazy there. Keep an eye on Fred Taylor's status in New England. If he's out, Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, and Danny Woodhead also have a favorable matchup against Detroit this week. Everyone excited about Fred Jackson right now. I have a feeling some of that excitement's going to be squashed this week as Buffalo takes on Pittsburgh, so I'm a little bit weary of Fred Jackson this week. Wide receivers are dropping like flies for the New York Giants, like I mentioned earlier. First, Steve Smith with his pec muscle injury. Now Hakeem Nicks is out for at least 3 weeks. That means Mario Manningham and Derek Hagan will start for New York. They have a good matchup against Jacksonville this week, so both of those guys. Derek Hagan, you might want to put a flyer on him and put him on your roster and see what happens. Mario Manningham, definitely a guy you might want to think about starting, especially against Jacksonville. Keep an eye on Mike Williams of Seattle. He hurt his foot against New Orleans. If he plays, he's a solid option against Kansas City, especially in PPR leagues. He has 17 catches for 254 yards in his last 2 games. Again, 17 catches in his last 2 games. Mike Sims, Walker, Brandon Marshall also listed as questionable this week. I honestly don't expect either of them to play. But keep in mind, I'm also not a doctor, so keep an eye on their status. Start the stars. That includes Calvin Johnson, Greg Jennings, Roddy White, Brandon Lloyd, Andre Johnson should all be in your starting lineup, as they should be every single week anyways. That must-start list now also includes Steve Johnson, Mike Wallace, and Dwayne Bowe. Those three guys have been lighting things up lately. There's no reason to think that that trend will not continue. Don't worry, I am going to talk about Vincent Jackson. He's expected to be back this week. If Phillip Rivers keeps slinging the rock like he has been, Jackson's going to have immediate value, much more than Sidney Rice has had in Minnesota so far, even though he might be able to pick up some points this week. It's going to maybe hurt Malcolm Floyd's value a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about him. More concerned about Patrick Creighton completely falling off the map. So if you have him on your roster, he might just disappear. Something's going to have to give in San Diego as Vincent Jackson comes back. Aren't too many injuries to report at tight end. You do want to keep an eye on Antonio Gates again. He's missed another game, so keep an eye on his status. I don't know if he's going to play. Vernon Davis also listed as questionable this week, but I do expect him to play. Again, I'm not a doctor. I can't guarantee anything. And Zach Miller had some issues with his injured foot, so keep an eye on his status as well. Jacob Tamme is a must-start for your team. The same goes for Mercedes Lewis these days. Might want to look at Jimmy Graham of New Orleans. He had 8 catches for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns over his last 2 games. So if Jeremy Shockey is out, keep an eye on his status. You can probably commit to Jimmy Graham. He's been a target quite a bit lately. He was especially against Seattle last week. Sorry, I had an itch on my nose. There's also Joel Dreesen of Houston to keep an eye on. Owen Daniels is questionable. Dreesen has 11 catches for nearly 200 yards in his last 3 games. And if Gates doesn't play, Randy McMichael is not a legit choice to back him up in your fantasy league. Brandon Pettigrew could also be big this week if Tony Scheffler is out. Detroit faces, again, a weak New England pass defense. So Brandon Pettigrew, keep an eye on Tony Scheffler. I think I've said keep an eye on maybe 50 times so far in this video blog. I have to think of a more creative way to say watch his injury status. But anyways, if Tony Scheffler is out, Brandon Pettigrew could be really big this week. Again, he's going to play on Thursday, so you're going to have to pull the trigger earlier than usual. No reason to think that Tyler Thigpen and the Dolphins have their stuff figured out. Taking on Oakland this week, so the Raiders might actually have some fantasy value on defense. If Houston can stuff Chris Johnson, he's going to have an extended workload with Rusty Smith starting at quarterback. The Texans might actually have some value with Rusty Smith at quarterback. Count on a few interceptions, maybe even a few fumbles and some sacks as well. So I think Houston's defense might actually have some value this week. Still like the Bears, still like the Steelers. Also like what the Panthers have done recently, oddly. Also like whoever faces Carolina. Cleveland is who faces the Panthers this week, so I expect the Browns to have some fantasy value as well. Also, the Ravens have some potential this week against Tampa Bay. I didn't go 10 minutes this time. Last week was 10 minutes. I apologize. I rambled my tail off. Anyways, that's it for this week. If you do have any questions, I'm always open to all of your questions. There are several ways to get in touch with me. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at Lewis Sports, Lewis Sports. You can get in touch with me there. You can connect with me on my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Tim Lewis Sports. You can also leave a comment on my website, timlewissports.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also just leave a comment here on YouTube. I promise I'll get back to you no matter how you get in touch with me. Also, my email address, tim@timlewissports.com. That's the way a lot of people are getting in touch with me. More than happy to answer all of your questions, so fire away with everything that you have. Also, want to encourage you to subscribe to me on YouTube as well. That way you can be the first to watch my videos once they're published, and once things slow down for me in my real life, I'll plan on putting out some more video blogs just about more general sports stuff. Anyways, I'm starting to get close to that 10-minute mark. I see it on my camera, so I got to get going. Have a happy, happy, happy Thanksgiving. Good luck this week. And again, fire all of your questions at me that you have. Take care.